So she said to someone, not me, because you wouldn't speak that kind of thing to a little girl. But I heard her, and she said, so-and-so is carrying a stomach. So we know the word stomach. And we know that the stomach is somewhere inside our bodies and it holds food. But that's not the stomach she was referring to. Something else inside our bodies holds something. And that is another stomach. So this stomach is food, holds food. And this other stomach, do you know or have any idea what she could have been talking about? Some of you know. Yes, that's correct. If a person is carrying a stomach, the person is pregnant. Pregnant. When in the old time days talk, you as a woman is carrying a stomach, you're supposed to be pregnant. But when you study this book, this novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, you have to have stomach. And it's not food I'm talking about, and it's not pregnancy I'm talking about. So here I go to a third stomach. To manage this novel, you have to have stomach. And this stomach is referring to stamina. Another word for another expression that you could use for stamina could be mental maturity. Mental maturity. I'm very happy that so many of you are thinking of doing To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a very, very important novel because it is steeped in history. It is teaching us many lessons about humans. Remember that when we do literature, we are learning virtually. So when you study this novel, you should be having some very important ideas about human life and what we as persons can do to improve our human lives. Before we go into the novel, we will look at our CSEC English B objectives. Students should be able to grasp insights from reading literature by detecting and assessing the apt use of devices, recognizing implicit themes, making critical appraisals of values and concepts, expressing literature and relating these to everyday living, organizing and sequencing ideas to communicate emotions and imaginative interpretations of experience. And these are our 2015 copyrighted objectives by CSEC. Now, we have been discussing general strategies of reading the novel. Before I start to go into the strategies though, I would like to ask you something else. Now, is black absence of light or is it a color? Both? All right then. Now, if you look at a person and you call the person this, Negro, what do you mean? That the person has no light or the person is black? Black. All right. So we need to agree. So when we refer to Negro, we're referring to black. And if a person is called a Negro, we are saying the person is black. Now, in this novel, you can only see two shades, black and white. This novel is about black versus white. That's why I say that you have to have stomach, because you are going to have to deal with some issues in this novel that has hurt a lot of persons for many years and still continue to hurt and affect people. So our general strategies: read and understand, making casual or familiar associations, reread again to identify important features and elements and make your notes, detect figurative devices, imagery, narrative techniques, and theme, because we want to always be examining the writer's craft, and review the form and structure maybe a third time to really put it all together and interpret the experience. Remember last week I was saying we live virtually through literature. We are able to improve our lives because we look at how other persons live, what is depicted of their existence, and we say we learn from it. Now, if you learn from it, it means that you are different after reading it. Very different. Now, we are going to continue to, those were our general strategies. But as I continue, I'm going to introduce a specific strategy to today's lesson. And we are going to do part 1 in this class today. And when we return, we are going to do part 2 and go deeper into the novel. Now, some very important features and elements in To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee are, features are aspects in the novel that they don't necessarily appear in every novel. So the writer may come up with different, for example, a writer may speak about a landscape, why it is significant to the story, but another writer may not dwell a lot on the landscape. Now, in To Kill a Mockingbird, how many of these are elements and how many will be features? Theme. A theme is an element. Every work of literature has a theme, holding it together, binding it together, and we're going to look at that some more. We have people in novels, in stories, and sometimes we have other things like animals, such as parodies, such as another novel with animals. You have no Animal Farm. Okay, that is a novel with animals. So we have people, so generally we have characters. So that is also an element in the novel. In this particular novel though, we have Negro, okay, a black person, and we have a landscape, a very important landscape. We have historical dates, we have children, we have school, and by extension, education. We have the judicatory right there, justice, very important part of the novel. And we have adults, family structures, and themes. Now, you see this up here? This is a very significant motif. And I have extracted a portion of the novel to show you the significance of it. Atticus, okay, one of our main characters in To Kill a Mockingbird, is speaking, and he says, "I'd rather you shoot at tin cans in the backyard." So the children just got their rifles, and Americans, is not like us. The ownership of rifles, very prevalent. So he says, I'd rather you shoot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you'll go after birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want, if you can hit them. But remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. So a mockingbird is seen as a bird that is just there to enhance creation. It is not a pest like the bullfinch, that Jem says Scout is like a bullfinch, a bird that is a pest. Imagine calling your sister a pest, or even worse, telling her that she's behaving like a girl. That's not nice. All right then. So let us get back to this. Here we have, a visual representation of some of the ideas that I've been speaking about in the last slide. Now, here we have the mockingbird, central to the story. The mockingbird is a motif. It is over and over you from the very beginning of the text. The mockingbird is following you. You can't escape it, because it is the umbrella under which the entire narrative is covered. It is a thread that wounds all the characters and the landscape and the ideas together, the mockingbird. So the title is very significant. And you see, the mockingbird is predominant in this graphic representation. Now, we have the themes, the central ideas that are even developed. We have, among others, justice. I said racism, but I said, remember, I said you have to have stamina, right? Because if you're a Negro and you're reading about atrocities and derogatory and discriminatory things, you have to be really strong to really absorb that. So the Negro, okay, so we have racism, okay, in this novel is very strong. And we have the family relationships, many different kinds of family relationships. And we have conflict as well, among others. Now, the narrative features, how the story is held together and told. We have the people and characters. We have them in time and place. And we have the purpose and the dialogue and the description. Now, these are narrative features, and I'm going to go into them a little bit deeper shortly. And we see here, this is a little map down here to show you where the place of the story is set. And where is this? Southern part of the United States. And remember this state? What's it called? Right, Alabama. All right then. Over here we have the narrative techniques, the method, okay, by which the writing, the story is told. And it could be language, imagery, figurative expressions, and point of view. And speaking of point of view, this story is told from what point of view? It is told from the first person point of view. So this story is told from the first person point of view, and it is told through a girl, and her name is Scout. So Scout is giving her experience. Very important. Now, when we are thinking of the different aspects, the themes and the techniques, and I say that the narrative techniques, I would like us to listen to some of the areas in which language, for example, is very important. So on page 30 in my text. Now Jem had gone out to school, and she got into some trouble, you know. So when she got into trouble, she went home for lunch that day, and Calpurnia became very upset. Now, before I reach Calpurnia, I will tell you something about language. Now, this reading, she says, it was then that Calpurnia requested my presence in the kitchen. So Jem had gone, and Scout had gone to school that day. And when they went to school, eventually, Jem had invited Walter Cunningham to come to have lunch with them. Now, if you are a Cunningham, it means that you are very poor, you hardly use money. So Walter did not bring any lunch to school that day, and the teacher, Miss Caroline, was asking him to take out his lunch. Now, Walter didn't have any lunch to take out, and Jem, being the spokeswoman in the class, she tried to explain to Miss Caroline that Walter really is a Cunningham, which he didn't understand. So eventually, at recess, Jem was taking out her anger on Walter, fighting him, Scout, and Jem came along, and to pacify matters, Jem invited Walter to lunch. Now they went to lunch, and you know, it looks funny, but class, distinction between class. So if you're poor, maybe you did not get enough social development. So Walter was at the table and he was eating his lunch, but he took the molasses and poured it all over the food, you know, just bathing the food. And Scout was so alarmed that she shouted out, you know, and Calpurnia got very angry. So what am I doing? I'm going to show you how language becomes a technique in the novel. So she was furious, that is Calpurnia. And when she was furious, Calpurnia's grammar became erratic. Okay? So Calpurnia is a Negro in the Finch's household. And she has learned social manners and she can speak in the standard. But when Calpurnia gets out, she forgets everything about standard. She goes, because when she's hurt, deep down in her core, she's going to express herself, and the standard is a learned or acquired language. That's not her true language, the innate one. And so she switches, and she was furious, says Jem. And when she was furious, Calpurnia's grammar became erratic. When in tranquility, her grammar was as good as anybody's. In Maycomb, Atticus said Calpurnia had more education than most colored folks. When she squinted down at me, the tiny lines around her eyes deepened. There are some folks who don't eat like us, she whispered fiercely. But you ain't called on to contradict them at the table when they don't. That boy's your company, and if he wants to eat up the tablecloth, you let him, you hear? No, Calpurnia, that's language. No, the writer is showing us through language. Calpurnia's emotions run deep, and she switches because that's the language that is going to enable her to give it to Scout the way she really wants to. So language becomes a technique. It's a method to communicate something in the story. All right then, so that's one example of language. Now I'm going to go to page 25 to give you another example, which is of imagery. Now, page 25, Walter is standing and speaking to Miss Caroline in the schoolyard. And it's almost lunchtime. Some of them are going to eat at school, and those who live nearby are going to go home. Now, she says, Walter is standing and speaking and answering Miss Caroline, okay? And at this point, he is listening to her, but he doesn't quite know how to answer her. All right then? And his face, she says to him, Miss Caroline says to Walter, did you forget your lunch this morning? Asked Miss Caroline. Walter looked straight ahead. I saw a muscle jump in his skinny jaw. No, that's the imagery. The writer is showing you that Walter's emotions are coming up. So right away you have description and you have imagery, which is we are reading that Walter is emotional, but it doesn't say that Walter is very emotional right now while looking. No, the writer creates it through the imagery. So I saw a muscle jump in his skinny jaw. Did you forget it this morning? Asked Miss Caroline. Walter's jaw twitched again. So you see, she's hurting him and he's getting emotional. So the image of twitching and jumping and we are getting the understanding that Walter is very emotional at this time. Now the writer doesn't write emotional at this time. The writer creates the imagery to help us to understand what Walter is suffering at this time. So you understand what I'm saying? Technique. So a lot of things can be pulled out of the novel without spelling it out. If the writer is to spell out every single thing, the novel would lose its intensity. It would lose its suspense. And our minds would not, our imagination would not be, developed and grow as much as it could. So these are the little things that enhance the reading as we go along. So narrative techniques. And we are going to continue to look at how we analyze and build our understanding of all the intricacies that are built around and tightened up into the imagery of the bird. Don't kill the mockingbird. All right then? We were looking at the intricacies that are bound together and the motif that's hanging over us as we read, which is a mockingbird. And remember, I was going through to show you some examples of how you can talk about narrative techniques and some examples of techniques. Now, this is our revision class, and today we want to do things a little bit differently than we did the last time. We were doing the short story. So I have a more specific strategy, and it is a QAR, the question answer relationship strategy, and we have borrowed it. So go along with me now, and we're going to go and look at some of the content that is in the novel through the strategy, which is a QAR strategy. Now, answer me now. The first one is at level 1. So the QAR strategy, we have 2 aspects to it, and those 2 aspects are subdivided into 2 other aspects. So we have in the text and in my head. Remember that I said to you before, reminded you that we live virtually through literature. So some of the information is going to be in the text as we read, but other aspects are going to be coming out of our imagination as we interact with the text. Remember when I was showing you how we could know that Walter was being very emotional. Remember, he did not have any lunch, and the teacher is quizzing him about his lunch, and that's a very not nice topic to be doing at that time in class. Imagine he's standing up and he's worked up, and you could see the muscle twitching and jerking because he's suffering. Now, that's in my head. We can draw things out as we can draw out the fact that Walter is emotional at that time. So we have in the text, right there in black and white, such as if I ask you, what is the name of Scout's father? Atticus. So Atticus is there, Atticus, right there in the novel. Okay then? And we have think and search. So you could really find it if you put 2 and 2 together, some other information. Now, in my head now, is author and me, it's like the techniques. You know, you want to discover how the writer did this or that, you know, to bring the story together. And then you have on my own where you go off into some ideas and lessons that you would have learned. So today we're going to go very quickly through some multiple choice items that help us to revise through this strategy. Now the first one, To Kill a Mockingbird, is written by, you saw it at the beginning, Harper Lee. All right, and Harper Lee is a woman. So she's a woman and she's on the other side, she's white. Okay then, so remember white versus black. I don't know why she wrote this story, but she's a woman and she's white. All right then, don't let that trouble you though. Just take the story for what it is. And remember that literature is cast in history. So we are learning some history lessons out of this book. So let us go to number 2. Which is not a main character in To Kill a Mockingbird? Now, often you're asked to write about the characters. Remember, the title of today's lesson is Characterization and Techniques. So characterization is the process of developing characters, attitudes, and values in people. So, for example, Scout. Scout grew up in the story. She moved from one stage to another. And when we talk about character, we are looking at the character and we're looking at characterization. And you're going to be asked about that, to speak about characters and to say how the experiences in the story changed them or did not change them and the impact on them. It impacts on us too. Okay then? So which is not a main character in a novel. A main character is a very significant person in the novel, and the novel would not be the same without that person. Jem, Calpurnia, Boo Radley, Miss Crawford. So Jem is Scout's brother. Calpurnia is the cook. All right then, Boo Radley. What the Boo stands for? Boo stands for Duppy. It's Duppy Radley in Jamaican term. Boo is ghost. Okay, American Boo, ghost. Well, Radley is a Duppy because the students, children, they haven't seen Boo. And they have all these stories, and Boo is supposed to be a hint. So Boo means ghost, Ghost Radley, Duppy Radley. All right then, so Miss Crawford is the gossip lady. She doesn't figure out much in the story. So the answer is Miss Crawford. All right, we're still in the text. The general setting in To Kill a Mockingbird is, remember that little map? South America. All right then. So South America, what do we know about South America? Well, apart from the Civil War, North versus South, a lot of slaves went there to work. Okay then, so South America has a lot of communities with black persons. All right then, so after slavery was discontinued, you know, it didn't discontinue in the minds of the people. And that's the problem with this story, where you have to have stomach, right? Because this jury, being predominantly white, still decided that this man needs to get off the face of the earth because he's black. And that's not nice. Okay then? So you have to have stamina. So Atticus Finch, in To Kill a Mockingbird, loved practicing law, disliked criminal law, regretted being a lawyer, or preferred to defend women. Which? Disliked criminal law. He wanted to do it at first. But you know, in the first 2 cases that he had, the people allowed, they didn't take instructions from him, and the law now is, you know, justice was served on them, and he was not happy about it. So, you know, sometimes you're doing your work, but you really don't like the work you're doing because of maybe what it does to you. All right then. So in To Kill a Mockingbird, number 5, Atticus' children's mother died. 6 years after his marriage, 4 years after his marriage, very soon after his marriage, or a year after Scout was born. How do you know that? Because Jem was 4 and Scout was 2 when their mother died. So 4 and 2, 6, okay? So that's 66 years. Still finding it out in the text. Now, Tom Robinson, To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh, I gave you that because we are looking into black and white. No, we are Tom, black person, Negro. Okay then, and that's a sore point. All right then, number 7. Aunt Alexandra in To Kill a Mockingbird was protective, is protective, wise, prejudiced, or neutral? Very prejudiced. She's even prejudiced against the way Atticus raises Scout, because it says that Scout wears too much overalls and pants and things like that. All right then. So going up now, drawing some implications. So in To Kill a Mockingbird, Scout really respected Calpurnia, hated Calpurnia, resented Calpurnia, loved Calpurnia. Though they had many fights. But remember when Jem was inviting Walter to lunch? Even though Scout fight so much with Calpurnia, she was boasting at that time, oh, Cal's a good cook. So you can't say she really resented Calpurnia, she respected Calpurnia. Number 9, which is not a characteristic of Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird? Scholarly, discriminatory, generous, fair-minded. Discriminatory because he is a lawyer who defended Tom. Okay, took the case on. All right, which is not a character trait in Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird? Tomboyish, talkative, adventurous, taciturn. Taciturn, because Scout, I'm telling you, she's going to be a lawyer one day. Okay, going up now, looking at the techniques and the author, why the author writes these things. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Jem, when challenged by Dill to knock on the Radley's front door, took 3 days. Why? He was having very good thoughts about it. He didn't want Atticus to beat him and Scout. He couldn't resist any challenge from Dill. He regretted having accepted the challenge. Which one? Huh? He regretted having accepted the challenge. No, to say something is one thing, but to make yourself do it is another. When you realize just what he had taken on, boy, he was trying hard to get out of it. All right, imagine that you're going to knock on a duppy's front door or something like that. You don't want to do that. Okay, then. Number 12. Tom Robinson was unlikely to be, no, Boo is not a duppy, but he's like a duppy because he's this mystery and all these stories. And I'm telling you, all of these things, it's just haunting them. So if you haunt someone, you're a duppy. All right then. So Tom Robinson was unlikely to be acquitted of rape charges in To Kill a Mockingbird because the jury was biased, the jury was white, the jury was racist, Tom was illegal. Which? Right. The jury was racist because you don't have to be racist when you're white, and bias is not as strong as racism. So the jury was racist. They saw the facts. But once you're a Negro, you're black, you don't stand a chance. You're not allowed. You remember when Mr. Radley's son was supposed to go to jail? No, he says his son can't go in the same cell as a black man does. Okay, then. So we are going to go down to number 13. In the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, the neighborhood's children have a long-standing fear of Boo Radley because of the impression that he's a bad ghost, he is a Dracula, he is very cruel, he is a kidnapper. They have the impression that he is cruel. All right then, which of the following is not regarded as a lesson? So we are on our own now. What have we taken? What are the virtual impressions that we have taken from the story? Don't judge persons only by their appearance. Don't use a weapon to deliberately hurt others. Mad dogs are always very dangerous to people. Everyone in the neighborhood respected Atticus. Not regarded as a lesson. Not regarded as a lesson. Don't judge persons by their appearance. Okay? Atticus was a very good shoot, and the children thought he was so old. They did not know that he was so good. So they thought he was useless, but he wasn't. Now we are wrapping up now, and we thank you very much. That's all for today.